Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Right Crowd. We are kicking off the finale to weekend 3 with our lovely array of authors and panelists here for their panel, Authors in Education. And I am so very excited to have you all here. I'm so excited to get into these conversations, for you all to share your stories, talk about yourselves, talk about your books. It's going to be really engaging and really exciting. And I'm so pumped for it. So to begin, I would like to give a shout out to everyone on Facebook and YouTube. I see our numbers climbing. So if you are watching, if you are here, go ahead and drop a comment, say hi, say hello. And this is a Q&A segmented panel. So if you have any questions, or if you want to leave a comment, or if you just want to say hi, please comment wherever you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. And I can bring up your question, I can bring up your comment, and our panelists would be more than happy to say hello back and answer any questions that you might have. But as people are signing on and coming on, I would like to have just brief introductions, just a real quick shout out of hello, my name is, and I'm the author of, for our amazing panelists here, before we jump into more detailed introductions and book descriptions. So really quick, hi, my name is, my book is, beginning with the lovely Ana Cavazos.
Hello, everybody. I am Ana Cavazos, and I am the author of Through Fields to an Education and my comic strips and cartooning book. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosa Linda Cruz, and I am the author of My Favorite Bubbles.
Thank you very much for joining us. And Dr. Itri Treviño.
Hi, everybody. I'm here checking in from Westlake, Texas. And my one of my recent books is Living and Teaching on the Texas-Mexico border and the life lessons it has taught me.
Thank you so very much. And we already have a comment coming in from Facebook from Mr. Raul Martinez Jr. saying, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for watching, Raul. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. And again, anyone on Facebook and YouTube, we're going to jump into more detailed descriptions, and you're going to hear all about themselves and all about their books in just a moment. But if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you'd like to say hi, feel free to leave a comment, and we're going to keep this as interactive and engaging as possible. It's going to be really fun. So our Facebook numbers continue to climb, and our YouTube numbers continue to climb as well. So if you're just tuning in, you are just in time to begin listening to our authors say hi and introduce themselves more in detail. Starting with Ms. Ana Cavazos, please tell us all about you, professional, personal, book descriptions. The floor is yours.
Well, I was born in California, raised in San Benito. I'm an alumni from San Benito. I worked as an educator for 20 years there. So shout out to San Benito. I worked lately with Harlingen for 10 years. I was in the library program. I was a library media specialist there for 10 years, and I've retired. I am now an author, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you. And Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, tell us a little bit about yourself and your book.
Well, my name is Rosa Linda Cruz, and again, I am the author of My Favorite Bubbles. And I reside in Los Fresnos, Texas. I am a school counselor in a public education setting, and I am also an LPC, and I contract with organizations and agencies. So I'm super excited to be here amongst all this wonderful talent.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And Dr. E.T. Treviño, tell us a little bit about yourself as well as your books.
Hi, everybody. I was born and raised in Acuña, Coahuila, and grew up in Del Rio, Texas. So all of my life, I've lived on the frontera, except for the time that I served in the Army. I was in other states, and then when I went to college. But other than that, my passion and my heart is in La Frontera, social justice, all of that, being bilingual and being proud of your culture and your heritage. You know, I've been in education 20 to 25 years. And so I am an educational consultant, and I love to write.
Thank you so very much. And again, thank you to all the panelists for coming on. Thank you for joining. And I'm very excited to get into these conversations and kick off our Q&A. But before we do so, once again, thank you to Facebook and YouTube. Our numbers continue to climb. And thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have a comment, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the comment section and I can pull it up. The panelists will be able to answer and engage. It'll be a lot of fun. And if this is your first time tuning into The Right Crowd, welcome. Essentially, The Right Crowd is a virtual author expo with panels of varying genres and topics with different writers and authors and special guests across just a huge array and variety of just different specialties. And I'm so very excited to present Authors in Education because there's just so much talent and there's going to be so much great insight and it's going to be really, really fun. And this event happens every single weekend in October. This is our third weekend. Next weekend is the last weekend, but that does not mean that it's the end of The Right Crowd. If you're tuning in a little later or you'd like to rewatch or share, you can always go back to authorkatelynrenteria.com/The Right Crowd and watch all these over again, share, experience, celebrate. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're in the comments, say hi, drop a question, and we are going to go ahead and begin with the Q&A segment. And my first question is, and we touched a little bit on it before, but for those of us just tuning in, where are you all tuning in from? Just a quick shout out of where you are currently residing and, connecting virtually. Ms. Ana Cavazos.
I hail from Harlingen. Shout out to Harlingen ISD as well. I hail from here and, of course, the Rio Grande Valley.
Very nice. Thank you. Rosa Linda Cruz, where are you tuning in from?
I'm Rosa Linda Cruz again, and I am tuning in from Los Fresnos, Texas / Laureles, Texas. We don't want to miss out that little outskirt of the town.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And Dr. Izzy Treviño, where are you tuning in from?
From Weslaco, Texas. Shout out to my friends and family from Weslaco, Texas.
Thank you so very much. And again, thank you all for taking time out of your day to come, speak, share, bring all the insight, start those conversations. I'm excited. And speaking of, my very first question for you all is, what made you sit down, and write those first words of your book? Did you know that you were going to set out and you sat and you said, okay, time to write, and you created this whole thing? Or did it kind of, manifest a little bit on its own and it didn't start out as a book, but here we are and you created it and ran with it? What's the story behind how this was created, starting with Miss Ana Cavazos?
I don't think at least in speaking for me, I don't think I set out to be a writer. I think in my heart of hearts, I was a writer because I've always been a reader. I remember going to libraries when I was little and thinking, reading an entire series at the time, the stories from India, the stories from China, just all these cultures. And I remember going to the librarian and asking her, can you buy more books? I've already read this whole wall. And she chuckled and she says, oh, honey, that's just not the way it works. Well, as a librarian, now I know it is the way it works. You could have just ordered more, but maybe she wasn't authorized. I don't know. So I think that at that time, I must have been like in third grade. So I think my psyche was developing. And I think as I grew and as I grew wiser even, I realized that there's just so much missing out there in the collections for children. I think as a parent, I was determined to keep our family stories alive. And so that's why I started writing all these stories to leave to my girls, because in my research, I cannot find documentation or anything that documents my great-grandparents. And they had such an interesting life. They were part of the people that came in and cleared the land here in the valley. In San Benito, from what I understand, there was the first place that they cleared. And so there's nothing documented of them working. So in that lack of information and history, I think it compels me to write what I do and what I know of everyday life now, so that my grandchildren can have something to look back at and know where to start to look for their history and find themselves. I also realized as an educator that as I sought for books for my students, I couldn't find anything that reflected the Rio Grande Valley culture. Yes, from Mexico, we can find a lot of things, from Italy, from just different cultures, but nothing from the Rio Grande Valley. And it is such a unique culture. Some of us are cultureless. We're not quite Mexican, but we're not quite, anything else. So we're a meld of things. where a lot of cultures put together. I call myself Asian just because I prefer that food. I call myself an American first, of course, with Mexican and Spanish descent, and then everything else that built me, that created my psyche and who I am. There are books like now there are books like Guadalupe Ruiz's Flores's Lupita's Papalote, The Battle of the Snow Cones, and Alicia's fruity drinks, those aguas frescas, but not enough yet of the Rio Grande Valley culture and everyday life. So I think that it was all of those things that eventually led me to the point where I wrote my stories down. So no, I did not set out to write a book, but I'm glad I did, and I hope to be the storyteller to keep our history and our family going. So that's where all this was going from.
I love it. And absolutely the aspect of like as well representation and recognition, just being able to, see, I understand this. I connect with this. This is me. This is where I come from. Truly, truly wonderful and truly amazing. And we do have a comment coming in from another author who was with us on a panel yesterday, Miss Miracle Austin, saying, hello, Ana Cavazos and everyone.
Hi, Miracle.
Hi, Miracle. Thank you for tuning in. And so, Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, what made you sit down and write those first words of your book? Where did your story manifest from?
I've always done journaling and little stories just to entertain my grandchildren. And so there was an event that actually my grandson was about maybe like 3 years old, and I had bought him a little bubble machine. So we had gone outside and we were in the process of having a little cookout and having family and friends. And I'm just very observant of everything. And he just was taking so much joy. But what turned everything around was that the family got involved with just the little bubbles blowing around everywhere. And it was just amazing because they were taking such simple joy and watching the bubbles dance, and everybody just literally stopped what they were doing and just enjoying that moment, being immersed. And the adults became very childlike, and the children, of course, are children running around and just enjoying themselves. And it really made a big impact because I even saw like my husband just stop for a second and just observe and make a comment about how the bubbles were like dancing. And it was funny that it was coming out of his mouth saying something like that. And so it just really stood out. And then of course, we had our little get together and stuff like that. But it kept going through my mind. And so what I started doing was I started putting the words together. So I do journal writing when I'm inspired by something, or when I'm moved by something, or something makes an impact. But there was like little connections. And so the words just kept going through my mind, and I just started, working and reviewing it and putting it together. And it took me about maybe 3 weeks to put it together. And then I shared the story with my grandson, and he loved it. And so I would entertain them with that, along with, all the other things that grandparents do. But, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, I had shared that story with a relative when they had visited maybe several months later. And she said, this is really good. You should consider publishing it. So, of course, I'm like, I'm not connected that way. I don't know even the first step on how to do something like that. And, with social media, we have so much access to so many things. And so I actually ran into a small publishing company, and it looked like they were accepting manuscripts. So I submitted my story. I waited several months, and then they contacted me. And they were like, we love your story. We want to publish it. And that's how that evolved. So it was unintentional, but a blessing. And just to be able to share that. So that's how I came across being an author of a children's story.
I love it. Thank you so very much. And Dr. E.T., what made you sit down and write those first words of your book or books? How did they manifest? What's the origin?
This specific book is very special to me because I started writing much of it back in 2000 and I want to say 2009 when I moved back to the Valley. And see, kind of like whenever I go through an experience that's kind of like an experience where it really, where I struggle in maybe situations where they weren't right or they weren't handled well, or maybe I was treated unjustly, or my kids, the way that I would feel better was to write about it. And so I would just kind of, like Rosa Linda was saying, journaling, writing my experiences, and then they just started piling up and piling up. And once I finished my doctorate, I would remind myself, hey, you have those journals that you've been writing, those memoirs. And then the more I started speaking to people about my experiences as a immigrant Mexican woman in the United States, living in La Frontera, right? Because just like Ms. Cavazos said, it's a very unique experience. Living in La Frontera is not like living in any other place in the world, right? To me. And so sometimes people would share with me, oh my God, that happened to me too. And so then I thought, wow, I thought all these things had just happened to me, but it looks like there's like a commonality with a lot of people that I know. So, I figured it was a time to put it together, and that's how that was born. It's really, my book has to do with memoirs of lived experience. And also, like Miss Ana Cavazos was saying too, there is not a whole lot to represent us, we're very limited in what we find having to do with the Mexican American culture or life in La Frontera in general. If I go look for a book of the experiences, you don't find any, right? And our kids need to see that. They need to see themselves in the books. They need to see, wow, it's not just me, other people have had that experience, right? And even the experiences that are unjust, right? How we can turn those around and turn them into positive learning experiences. So that's how I came up with living and teaching on the Texas-Mexico border.
Thank you. I love that so much. And I think it's a testament, to all of our panelists and authors here that, writing can stem from those experiences and from that want to represent and want to show. And I think it, whether outright or not, it also reflects to other, students or aspiring writers or authors. Like if I can write about what I know, and if I can write about my culture and my place and who I am, like this, contribute and grow the collection. And that's how it starts. So thank you all very much for, writing the way that you do and writing what you do. I know I myself, as a reader and as, a fellow Rio Grande Valley resident, I'm very grateful. So my next question for you all is, who or what were some inspirations for your writing career? This could either be, relatives or family or, educational figures, teachers, librarians, or other authors, other writers, people that you knew, or role models. Who or what were some inspirations for your writing, starting with Miss Ana Cavazos?
I would like to read a little bit just to kind of give you an insight of the kind of person I was at the age of 5, just so you can get an idea of what was building up as we grow. I think we all experience things, and we kind of take what we want or what we need and use it, and it becomes part of your psyche, part of your personality or your characteristic. So I wrote a poem called Borders in Her Mind. And at the age of 5, this is what was going through my mind, and that I can recall that must have been very impressionable for me, what was going on at the time for me to have kept this. But it says, tiptoeing along the crumbled edges of her Spanish world and carefully stepping into the English world, just beyond the gate at the end of her sidewalk at home. Spanish, the choice language of her American parents at home. Within the gate, a little girl in pigtails and in her Sunday best, absorbing the world around her, learning to be like the people around her, changing, conforming, absorbing all that was new, assimilating, an American citizen for several generations. So I think that absolutely family life experiences, everyday life, certainly impacts us and creates these stories or brings back memories that we can recollect and write down and keep as a story. I also know that I forever searched for me in books. I remember reading a story as a first grader about a little girl named Linda who had black hair, kind of like Dr. E.T.'s, beautiful black hair, and I loved her. She had hair up to here. She was just a character in one of our readers. And she had black hair, and I think that's why I could relate to her. But she was not Spanish speaking. She was not a Mexican little girl. So to me, I thought that was the closest that I could find it to reflect me or to kind of represent me. So I think it wasn't until I read The House on Mango Street with Sandra Cisneros, and I could relate to the little girl Esperanza. Just a glimpse, a glimmer of me was in there. And I think Bless Me Ultima also is another novel that reminded me a little bit of grandma, because grandma used herbs to take care of her stomach ache or take care of her headache or any of those things. So that kind of showed a little bit of a reflection of me and everyday life. But see, notice that these stories were here when I was an adult. They were not there when I was a child. So for me to continue that search, I think I'm still always looking for something to represent me. Of course, Dr. Seuss, big. He was big in every child's life. So I love Dr. Seuss. I also like Javier Garza and all his Cucuy stories. That is relevant and it resonates with me. And I remember hosting Javier as a librarian when he came with a paper manuscript, and he read and he kind of almost entertained our children with a story called La Piggy. That was so relevant and resonated with all the La Encantada kids out in the country in San Benito. And so I thought, this is amazing. These are the kind of stories we need that children can look at, can read, and can find themselves in. So I think that was very relevant. Now, of course, we have David Bowles, and he has representations and crossover to novels that represent the Mexican American culture, but also in a more contemporary way. So he has crossed over, but he's kept some of those stories that we love. He has one called De Call Me Güero. It's border poems, and I love it because isn't that what they call, well, my cousins who are more fair-skinned, they used to call them güeros, but they were actually from Mexico. They were actually Mexican. So you see how we can distort the cultures and kind of change them and kind of meld them how we want. So David Bowles is from McAllen, and he's been awarded many times over. So these are the inspirations that I look to. And I think at the end of the day, I read all that, I take it in, but at the end of the day, it's my family who moves me, who motivates me, and my friends, of course, my childhood friends. Shout out to her, she knows who she is, and all of these people that made an impact in our lives. So that's where I get my inspiration from.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And before I hand the question over to Rosa Linda Cruz, I do have a comment for Miss Rosa Linda coming in from Facebook from Miss Ana Loera, librarian and previous panelist. Hi, Rosa Linda Cruz. Derry Elementary misses you. So, Miss Rosa Linda Cruz, what were some inspirations for yourself?
I want to say that there's so many variables that impact us, and especially like for me growing up, I was an avid reader from the very beginning. And of course, as an avid reader, you branch out in one direction and then another and another. So I range from fairy tales, and then I hit middle school, and I just would read as many books as I could on females with biographies and how they achieved and how they accomplished their goals. And then I transitioned into the teen stage, and I hate to admit this, I don't know, but Harlequin romance books were like what I used to feed off of. I used to read those. And then of course, I transitioned into a lot of fiction books, and I transitioned into a lot of self-help books. And so there's a lot of variables that impact me. And of course, there's all the positive stuff, but I have found that where we grow the most is when we are impacted by a challenge in our life, by a crisis, by the curveball of obstacles and sometimes negative energy, and you pull yourself up. And so my story and the other story that I will have coming out in a couple of months always has an underlying theme of wellness and inner joy and looking for the positive. Because that's how some people are able to get themselves through stuff. And so for me, the underlying tone at this stage of my life is always looking for the good and what motivates us to become better. and what lights up our life, what makes us sparkle, what comes from our heart. And for me, of course, my impact has always been, the joys of my life, which is my family. And right now I am a grandmother, and anybody who is a grandmother, it is a very different phase of life. It is just amazing. And so when I see them, they give me energy. They remind me of what life is like. They smile, they giggle, they laugh, and it's like a renewed energy. And it's also a renewal of making new goals in my life. And so when I see them and I see children and I see adults, people that I know, friends, colleagues, professionals, they all impact me in some way. And so for me, it's all about just rewiring ourselves, especially in this time, and moving forward with all of the things that light up our life. And for me, that's very important.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. And Dr. E.T., what were some inspirations for your writing career and for yourself?
So I think I have like three. One is personal, and that would be my husband, because forever and ever and ever, he would always tell me, why don't you write a children's book? Why don't you write a children's book? Why don't you write this? Why don't you write that? Why don't you write a book? And I would tell him, yeah, you think it's so easy, but it's not, right? But he always had this vision of my writing, and he would say, there's something you can share with the world, right? Number two for me also is the work of Gloria Saldúa. She writes about La Frontera, and there's not a whole lot of people writing about the Frontera. And so when I would read what she would say about how us living on the Frontera, we're atravesados, we're not from here, we're not from there, we're like in the middle. And so that really helped me feel like, oh, okay, I can identify myself with something. And then the third thing kind of has to do with what Rosa Linda was saying about looking for the positive. But at the same time, I wanted to focus on social justice, on disrupting a space. Sometimes it's like nobody talks about certain things that happen to students and to, bilingual people and all this and that, right? We don't talk about those things. And so to me, I like to bring those things to light. And I like for us, because when we talk about social justice, we get people to think about really, how do we act in these situations? Have we actually helped or supported people or not, right? And for me, a lot of my experiences, people would never know that I failed high school, and I fell through the cracks. And that's like a huge, long story. And I like to share that because many people are real hard on themselves. They fail once and they give up. They think, oh, that's it, But in reality, I like to share, and I like to write about the positive, that it doesn't matter how you start. What matters is how you finish, right? And how many times you can keep going and you can keep trying. It's all about empowerment. To me, writing is about empowerment, giving somebody a gift, giving somebody hope that no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, what your experiences have been, that you can always rise above it and change it, right? And I believe I'm an example of that, and that's something that I strive for. But I do love to disrupt certain spaces, and I do like to bring up the things that are unjust, because sometimes people see those things, but nobody does anything about it, right? And so one of my favorite people ever is Dr. Jose Medina, and he's very big about making us think, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough to help kids? Are we doing enough? And usually when I listen to him, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even doing enough, right? So it's to get us as educators in all areas of education to really think about what we're doing and how we can change and support and advocate for our kids.
Wonderful. I love that very much. And there were a couple of comments coming in during all of your answers. I know Delia Salinas on Facebook says, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Kate. Hi. Thank you so very much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And I know Miracle Austin was picking out some really good gems and really good quotes, referring back to Dr. Iti saying kids need to see themselves in books, which is absolutely true and absolutely wonderful. And from Ana Cavazos, I searched for me in books. Very wonderful, very beautiful. And Miracle Austin also says social justice issues are vital. Thank you. And I 100% agree. So again, for anyone on Facebook or YouTube, if you'd like to interact, if you'd like to comment, say hello, ask a question, please do so. And our panelists will absolutely interact, engage, answer, say hi. And we want to keep this as interactive and engaging as possible. So my next question for the panelists is, how has our current world situation impacted your writing career? Because I know I think we're all feeling it a bit where, some days are harder than others, and we persevere and we go through, and there's just so much going on in a million different realms: personal life, professional life, author life, family life. And so how has our current world situation impacted your writing career? Has it allowed you to maybe delve into writing a little bit more? Have you had to pull back and focus on other things? Are there other projects that you're putting your effort and energy into, starting with Mrs. Cavazos?
I think it impacts us in many different ways. For sure, it did give me more time to write. I'm finally getting through the kinks of what was going on with my publishing of my second comic strips and cartooning book. So that should be done this weekend. Yay, after so long. And working on my third book and working on my novel. And for the novel, I'm researching. So that's going to take a little while. And this is where that information, or the lack thereof information of grandma and grandpa and what was going on in their life, is lacking. And so I'm kind of hitting a lot of roadblocks, but that's just the way it goes. And I do want to make it a little bit of add historical facts in there. So that's where that's taking me. But I also had to kind of put on my brakes, because I'm sitting here in my desk, but in front of me are two different workstations for two little girls, two third graders. So I'm having to do that too. And they're very self-sufficient. I really don't have to do a whole lot except go get me some snacks, Grandma, or Auntie, I need this. And so I do that. And they're starting to go back to school, so that'll give me more time. But I don't mind at all doing that. In light of the pandemic and what's going on, parents are nervous, and I'm just happy to be here. We're blessed to have me be at home and be able to do some of that. But besides that, again, it's given me time to research. It's given me time to kind of reflect. Absolutely a big learning curve, new equipment, having to research for what works, what doesn't work, trying out StreamYards, trying out Zoom, and also helping Valley Byliners. I want to give them a shout out, because they have kept me sane in just a really dark time in my life when I've lost mom and everything. So if it weren't for them and me working with them and volunteering my time with them, I don't know where I would be. But we slowly pull out of these things that happen to us in life, and we move forward. And so I'm at the moving forward time right now. And so I think all this has impacted me very much. But at the same time, anytime I'm down, I work really hard to get back. And so it's given me that extra push to work on whatever I need to work on, and work on myself and help others.
Very nice. Thank you very, very much. And I had some comments coming in for yourself. Ana from Carmen Suarez on Facebook saying, "Hi, ladies." Hi, Ana. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. And Rosario Ozuna, a wonderful librarian and former panelist from Gruya, says, "Hi, everybody." Hi, Ana. Hello. Thank you for tuning in, Rosario. You're always so supportive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We have a YouTube comment saying, "Good stuff, guys." Thank you very much. Glad that you're enjoying and getting and absorbing and learning. And we also have some congratulations for Ana on your upcoming work from both Miracle Austin and Rosario Ozuna. So there's congratulations in order for yourself. And so, Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, how has our current world situation impacted your writing career and your authorship?
Well, I have several projects going on in addition to writing. And so I have branched off a little bit more into the counseling field. I'm getting more certifications on healing and trauma. And so I've been invited to, different things and events, of course, via Zoom and social media and talking about that. But I've been able to squeeze in a couple of the stories to review. And I did have one particular story that I really have been working on. And so I was able to finally connect with my former illustrator, Alex Ray. And so we actually have been working on a book that will be coming up. Hopefully, I want to say in about a month and a half. And we're almost done. We're almost done. But for those of us who are involved in that writing process and getting it out there and editing, it's a lengthy process. But I'm super excited because it's going to be a bilingual book. And so, again, inspired by my grandchildren. And again, you know, I've got that counseling underlying theme of OCD because they love dinosaurs, but it's about doing something that you love, and it's about learning and, you know, going on a journey. And so, you know, you still have that underlying theme of inner joy and taking the time to do the things that you love. And so I'm super excited about that because not only is it going to be incorporating all of my grandchildren, because I have 3 now, and so, but it's bilingual. And for me, I have been really impacted by all of the things that are happening in our world right now, especially in the United States. And so it made me take a couple of steps back. And how can we embrace our culture, not lose our language, and incorporate it with the younger generation? Because I am a 3rd generation American. And so now I find that my grandchildren are losing, and it's okay to be immersed in our culture that we have, but I don't want them to forget the little things. So I'm finding with my grandchildren, the little ones, that, you know, I'm reading more of those books. The pollitos, pío, 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 dicen los pollitos. I know I'm not saying it right, but that's how I sing it to them. Las mañanitas, there's little books out there like that. And I thought to myself, and they're in Spanish and English, and I thought to myself, well, I have ideas and I'm bilingual, not like Dr. Edith, but, you know, what I don't know, I have friends that will help me out with it. And so I came up with that version. And so I'm super excited. It should be coming out hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of December. So I just talked to our illustrator, Alex Ray. Some of you are familiar with him. He's wonderful. He used to work for Disney, and he, you know, branched out and now is doing a lot of things on his own. Just wonderful talent. And so you know, it's a team effort, but I'm excited that we're going to be able to do this in 2 languages with beautiful illustrations, and hopefully we'll get that out soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know I think I speak for all of us here on the panel of just round of applause. Congratulations for the upcoming publication, and also the bilingual aspect. That's so exciting and that's so wonderful, and huge congratulations to yourself, most definitely.
Oh, okay. So for me, I guess looking at what's going on with the world with COVID, I just started writing to help some of my teacher friends with some of the social emotional, because there was nothing out there for them. You know, there's a lot for students. So that got me going. And then publishing some workbooks for parents on how to support their kids online. And so a lot of that writing contributed to what's going on right now, just because I can see the need and people asking for support. And then on the other spectrum, you know, having seen everything that's been going on, you know, with the political climate in our country, again, I wanted to highlight the Mexican culture, right? And that we are contributing, and that we are intelligent, and that we are amazing, and that we have a lot to bring to the world, because, again, our kids are not seeing themselves. They're not seeing their own lived experience and their stories. So to me, it was more of okay, I need to get something out there that talks about our culture and our heritage and our lived experience on the frontera. I need to hurry up. It was this pressure. I can't even explain it. It was like just me holding myself accountable that I needed to hurry up. And I think it's like 3 years late from the time that I really felt pressured within myself. So it was a combination of my writing having to do with, you know, COVID and the political climate and all that.
Very nice. Thank you very, very, very much. And my next question has to deal with the theme of the panel. for everyone here, which is how has your experience in education impacted your view of literacy and or your writing? Either, working in the educational field, any insights that you may have gained, or experience, or little pockets of wisdom that you've carried with you that you've been able to see literacy maybe through a different aspect. You had like a concept of it, and through your experience, it evolved, and maybe even how it's impacted your writing habits or writing styles or what you wanted to write about, beginning with Ana Cavazos.
I think that absolutely my experience as an educator has impacted the writing, especially since I had that behind the scenes look at how librarians purchase things, the kind of allocations and funding that they have for bringing in speakers for children and things like that, gives me that behind the scenes look or information, know-how. So I think that knowing that if we put out anything, if we want to serve as a schools, which is something that I like to do, I want to give back to children and help guide them because there's so much need there. I believe that you need to know that your work must have a theme, must or should be aligned to to what the teachers are teaching. Because if we cannot help them, if we want to go in there and share our experience, we need to have a service or provide something that'll help the teacher in the classroom bring that child to fruition or to wherever he needs to be. So it's certainly our work has to be aligned somehow. It has to be something that will help the child. There's so many themes, so many things. There's divorce, there's now going to be anxiety, and there's going to be all kinds of maybe depression, maybe fear. Think about it. It's been about more than half a year. Some children have never been outdoors, maybe out to the store. Babies have not been out to the store. The smaller children have no idea what it's like to be out in an open playground. So there's so many themes that we can focus on. There's so many things that were already there that they need help in. Absolutely, what Rosa Linda was saying about her book, yes, that OCD, I think you mentioned, all these themes must be helpful to the child and in turn be helpful to the teacher so that we can put that on their shelves or be of some service, not just go in there and be an entertainer. So I mean, they need our help, they need us, but they need us in a way that we can help them teach. Shout out to all the teachers and educators right now. It's just phenomenal, the things that they had to crash course learn on, equipment that had to be provided, just so many things that they had to do to convert their lessons from hands-on and all of this to film and to all kinds of different programs and apps and just communication apps, just an enormous amount of things that they have to do. So if we can go in there and lighten the load on writing, on reading, on spelling, on grammar, on alliteration, anything that they need, then we can be helpful and we will be of use and they will want us there. So I'm hoping to provide a lot of workshops on writing through comic strips. I know writing was tedious for me and tedious for my grandkids and many other students. So why not make it fun? Use comic strip templates that'll help them kind of organize their thoughts and organize their writing. And I'm hoping I can do that through virtually or maybe eventually face-to-face. So any way I can help teachers. I've got an educational background, a librarian background, technology. So I hope to help them somehow. So yes, education has impacted anything that I think about and set forth from now on.
Very nice. And a lot of good points, and absolutely like hats off and hearts go out to the teachers and the educators and the librarians, the administration, and just, things that were not in the job description have had to be learned and brought on and evolved and grow. And you serve in such a large capacity, not only in, the actual education aspect of students and of youth, but you truly are bridging, the gap of keeping those connections alive. It's difficult if students are spending all of these months within the same four walls of their home and they see family members, but the interaction that you're giving, like virtually and in class, and being able to, with the classmates, and you keep it engaging and you organize and keep it, hats off and hearts out 100% absolutely to the educators out there. So thank you for all that you do. And Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, how has your experience in education impacted your view of literacy and or your writing?
For me, on the education aspect, as far as like the writing, I mean, it certainly has opened up a lot of doors where, we get a lot of invitations and we're able to present to our students. But I think like my favorite part is just being more aware of the type of literature that is out there, the type of literature that is available to our students, and just, I don't, like what is out there that can connect with our kids, that they can identify with. And so I think it's made me more aware. But I also love the opportunities that I can interact with the students or with the children, because they'll come up and they'll say they love the book, or that they find a connection through illustrations. And so through the illustrations, and they connect the reading. And so you're able to cover like all different types of aspects, and you're able to have these discussions. So it's really funny because I had a parent one time bring her student to an event, and she was like, he doesn't want to read, but he loves to draw. So I was able to talk about how illustrations are important, but that he needs to make sure that he's aware of how to connect that to the words and to the sentences and to the storyline. And it was like a light bulb when, just being, and then he just was, you could see the connection. And, and of course I gave him a book, and I said, you can do amazing things with your life, but you have to be able to make all of these connections. And so it's very inspiring. And for me, I still work in the educational setting. So I'm very private about a lot of things, but I had one student that soccer player, and was having some academic issues along with some other things, and I was meeting with him, and I found out he was a poet. And so I told him, I said, he showed me some of the things that he was writing, and it was amazing. But he was like, well, what's the point of me writing? No one will ever see it. And I said, I have something I want to share with you. And he said, what? I said, you don't understand. I was like, the only thing that is holding you back is you. I said, there are so many opportunities out there. I said, for the talent that I see here, because he was writing from the heart. And so I said, I'm going to share something with you. I said, I have a little book floating around. I said, and not once did I ever think of something like that happening. So I pulled it up and I shared it with him. And then I convinced him to show his work to the English teacher. And so there was a contest that was going on. It was a national contest. And he submitted his work and he was recognized. And it just became, even before he got recognized, it just became a change. It became a ripple effect of him wanting to do better, of being more involved in his academics, of that I can be a soccer player and be one of the guys, but have a tender heart and share my emotions. And that was just amazing. So that's how I'm impacted in my educational field with my writing, through the connection with my students.
I love that so very much. Just heartful and just like, oh, it's so very happy. And I love that, just the aspect of, those connections are so vital and they're so real and they're so genuine, and you can never conceive or even think of, those connections. When you put the book out, you don't think, oh, one day I'm going to meet this person and this is going to happen and their life is going to be impacted. Wonderful. They happen. And as it comes, you never expect it, and it grows and it blossoms. And absolutely wonderful, absolutely beautiful. And Dr. E.T., how has your experience in education impacted your writing or your author career?
I think for me, it's impacted it in the way that I'm always gearing to promoting being bilingual, bicultural, and because that's something that needs to be highlighted, especially here in our region. We have many students that sometimes are embarrassed to say that they speak Spanish. I know adults who say they're embarrassed to speak Spanish, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a global language. In many other countries, you are required to speak at least 2 languages. And so for me, every minute when I go out into the world to work, to present, I am always representing our culture and our language. And really, it's all cultures and all languages, right? But for me, it's my culture and my language, our culture and our language. And so when I'm writing, I make sure that I include that because we don't have enough of it. You know, our kids need to be able to again, like I said earlier, see themselves in the books and see themselves in the stories and be able to identify. And I totally see what Anna's talking about. As a little kid, if I saw somebody in a book that had black hair, I would be like so honored because I was like, oh, she looks like me, right? Because we want to see ourselves. We want to believe that there's people like us that we can be those people, right? We need role models and examples. And so for me, it's all about empowering kids and adults to be who you are, be proud of who you are, because you know what a gift it is to be able to be who you want to be, right? And sometimes, you know, I like to wear my Mexican shirts everywhere I go, and sometimes people will be like, oh my God, I love it. You know, I have mine, but I never wear it, only on Cinco de Mayo. I'm like, why? I mean, wear it whenever you want, right? But it's, again, disrupting the space. That's what it is for me. Seeing the misrepresentation, right, of our children and of our culture in the schools, in the academics, in the literature. That's what I am triggered by. Yeah, in a positive way.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And we have a few comments coming in from YouTube from local author and our resident poet mariachi, Daniel Garcia Ordaz, who was on a panel earlier this afternoon saying, one of the most rewarding actions we can take as writers is to inspire and encourage other writers. Awesome anecdote, Rosa Linda Cruz. And he also says, way to go, Dr. E.T. It's important to celebrate all cultures. Sad that although Hispanics make up most students in Texas, there's very little representation in our literature in schools. And I think that's just another wonderful aspect of the panelists here where, you know, the representation and writing from experience and telling those, you know, stories of your family and things that were inspired by, you know, a family event or past experiences and bringing those to light. So that way, you know, other readers and students and people of all ages can still reflect and recognize and resonate. And it's absolutely wonderful. And I do have a comment from Raul Martinez Jr. from Facebook saying, Katelynn, these panelists are inspirational. I'm now mulling ideas as to how someone like me might further promote my own area and culture of La Frontera. That is the goal. That is the goal of having the panelists and the authors inspire, promote, spark that little light, spark that energy, keep it going. I'm so very glad. And the Q&A is going to continue. So for anyone watching on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to comment, share, ask questions. I love the interaction. I love the engaging. And it's so wonderful to see the connections being made where, you know, that's the magic and the power of, you know, virtual connection. We may not be together, but we're connecting, we're inspiring, we're bouncing off energy. It's going great. And my next question for you all would be, what is the easiest and or most difficult part of writing or being an author, either in the sense of actually writing or getting the ideas, or maybe in a more practical sense of like marketing or, you know, the publication process or any other realms? What would be the easiest or most difficult aspects of this writing career, starting with Ms. Cavazos?
I think the easiest is absolutely sharing with children, with students, young adults, and letting them know, giving them that hope, giving them that light and that nudge and telling them, yes, you can do this. I remember a story about a little boy who, I had a comic book club in a couple of schools. And in one of them, we had auditions and we had judges from other places selecting the students that were going to be in this comic strip club that would meet every single morning. And all we did was draw and eventually come up with a t-shirt and comic strips that would be like advertisements or promoting health and promoting values and things like that. So this little boy submitted his work. He was not selected. So, I mean, I had my group from first grade all the way to fifth grade. I had a handful of students. And I thought, okay, that's it. That's my group. And then lo and behold, the principal calls me because this young man had appealed. So he appealed to the principal, wrote a letter, submitted more work, and told him why he thought he belonged in that club. So we had a big roundtable meeting, and you know, he was sitting there and he was just as brave as can be. And he spoke to us and he said, yes, I think that I should be there. And in my mind, I was thinking, yes, you should be there. And he turned out to be the most amazing young man, absolutely the light of that comic strip club. And so that was the end of that story. But see those moments where you are redirected to by children and by students is amazing. It's just amazing. It's a learning experience. So going back to the easiest, absolutely, that's the easiest, is sharing with them, nudging them and telling them, yes, you can. They need to see the relevance. They need to see the real world and see that they do have a part in that real world. I think the most difficult is the part where we share stories that are close to our heart. That little piece that I wrote to you is part of a poem, and that poem is part of a collection of poems that I can't release because either it brings light to my family and they might not be okay with it, or I'm not ready to share that piece that's just close to my heart. So the most difficult is sharing anything that is close to you, anything that has a little bit of your heart and soul in it, for sure. I think our culture is one of humbleness. It's one of, and the hailing of myself as an author was very difficult to do at the beginning. I could not wrap my mind around it until someone shook me and said, hey, you're the author. You wrote it, did you not? You might not be J.K. Rowling, you might not be, but you are the author of Through Fields to Education. So you need to embrace it. And I think Rosa Linda kind of set me straight one time as well. So it's just very hard because our culture is very humble and we don't quite, embrace it right away. In addition, like I said, I've always highly respected and admired authors, and I know that I'm nowhere near the status of J.K. Rowling or Mike Taylor or Rick Riordan, absolutely not, David Bowles, but I learned that I am in a status on my own, and I want to bring that to students, to people, to anybody that I meet, and let them know that they too can do all this.
Very nice. I love that so much.
Yes.
And so for Rosa Linda Cruz, what is the easiest or most difficult aspect of your writing career and your authorship?
I want to say the easiest is just writing the stories because they're coming from within you. And it's a personal experience. And it doesn't get any more personal because it's really almost coming from your soul, and you're sharing a little bits and pieces. And so you are sharing an experience, you are sharing a moment, you are sharing just a little piece of you, because there's so many things that build us and make us who we are. And so the process is not that the writing and that it fits together immediately, but it's a labor of love. It's not work, because even if you change it and review it and edit and revise and tear it up and throw it in the trash can and pull it out and bring it into little pieces and put it together, it truly is a labor of love, because you see something in that story that has somehow impacted you and you want to be able to share it. So is it work? Yes. But it's something that is inside of you that just keeps you moving and going. The challenging part is just sharing that information. The process is very lengthy. The publishing world is very competitive. And I had a person said, you're writing these books and they're about little boys, maybe, and you have Rosa Linda Cruz on it. And they didn't actually come out and say, well, maybe you need to change your name. Maybe you need to have more appeal. And my response was, that's my story. And I own it proudly and rightfully. And so my grandchildren are going to know who wrote that story. And I'm going to share it with everybody. And so I do agree with Anna that we are raised to be very humble, and it takes a lot of work to be able to say, I'm like really proud of that, because it comes from love, and it comes from just sharing something that has made an impact. And it's a blessing for me. it's a personal blessing that I'm able to share this little story because there's a ripple effect on it. Sometimes it's something very small, and sometimes it can be something bigger that we don't foresee. So the challenge is being able to get out there. The blessing for me in all of this is to discover the amazing talent that we have in the Valley. Amazing writers who are teachers, who are business owners, who are nurses, who are, educators, who are in all kinds of fields, and they have this inside of them and they are sharing. So the networking and to know all of these authors that are out there in different levels, different topics, different categories is amazing. And I wish that somebody would come up with an event and just share all of this, which Katelynn, you are doing, and show that to our students at schools in the educational setting. Because when I see someone who is famous, it's not someone who connects with me directly, even though I do admire their work and everything that they have done to achieve that. But it's amazing to see the talent and what it has taken for them to get there, that I'm always amazed by. And so again, I just, it's challenging, but I love it. It's a work, it's not work for me. It's just something that I enjoy doing. And so that right there is many of that's what the positive thing is about writing.
I love that so very much. And you said it so beautifully and so eloquently and just all encompassing of, you're right. It's the teachers, it's the business owners, it's the, all the everyday people that you see, and you have no idea that they're writers. You have no idea that they're authors. You have no idea that there's this talent and this passion that they're giving and bringing out. And referring back to the name in that little story you shared, Daniel Garcia Ordaz said, that's why J.K. Rowling had to use J.K. She was rejected by so many publishers simply due to being a woman writing the story of a boy. But ultimately, it's a universal story. You be you. And 100%, absolutely. That's a wonderful message to be portraying. And I love the way that you said it, Rosa Linda, of just own it. And it goes back to what Ana Cavazos is saying about, wrapping your head around, I'm an author, ? And it's like, you're you. This was your story. This was your work. This was your experience. You put in the effort. You made it come to life. Like this story exists. This book exists because of yourself. And I think that's just a wonderful thing also for students and readers and aspiring authors to see reflected that, they're proud of what they wrote and they put it out. And it's just a very, very big thank you to all of you for just being you. And again, going back to disrupting the system, Daniel Garcia Ordaz had said, the only way to overcome oppression is to disrupt the system, but with love and positivity. So absolutely, absolutely. Stemming back to Dr. E.T., so many great points here and absolutely wonderful. But Dr. E.T. as well, what is the easiest or most difficult aspect of writing for yourself?
Writing for me is something that's very personal. And sometimes I feel it in my soul. I really have to write about this. And it'll be something that'll be in my heart that I have to stop what I'm doing and start writing. It's almost, like giving birth, it's also writing from your heart can also be very vulnerable because, like Rosa Linda was saying, it is a labor of love. It's something that's very personal. To be able to put it out there, what we're thinking or our experiences. But in reality, we look at it because it's for the greater good, because we want our students to see themselves. We want others to say, yeah, that was me. And, I did overcome that. Or so for me, writing does not come easy. I can't say tomorrow I'm going to write a new book and, it's going to be done. It has to be born in my heart. I have to feel it in my heart, and it has to be getting me inspired and motivated. And when I'm writing, I think I am the happiest when I'm in that element. It's to me, it's something very special, very beautiful. Sometimes people think, oh yeah, they just wrote a book, whatever. But no, for us, it's something. Again, it's a labor of love, right? And it's kind of one of those things that you're putting yourself out there, and you have to be very confident because, you're always going to have somebody say, oh, why would you write that? Or that's a lame story. I mean, just, because you do have your critics. But I know for me, when I put out a book, it's like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm proud of it. And I understand it. And it's my gift to myself. Right. But it is, I wouldn't say that it's easy. I don't even know if there's like the easiest part. Maybe the easiest part is when you have the book and you can give it away to somebody. That's like the easiest part. But it's, I really don't know if there's an easy part, because your books are like your children, and you nurture them. And for many of us, it's taking us years or months, and this didn't work out. So it's not gonna go out, or maybe it goes out and then there was a little mistake. So then we have to recall it. So there's so much that goes in, but once it's out, it's like giving birth. To me, it was like a beautiful art piece,
I love that. Thank you so very much. And I do have a couple of comments that I'm going to backtrack and bring back. I know while Ana Cavazos and Rosa Linda Cruz were saying their pieces for the previous question, Daniel Garcia Ordaz said, way to go, Ana A. Cavazos. Comic book creation is a great way to meet students where they are. The boy became the hero of his own comic strip. And introverts often become artists, authors, and creators, so it's a hurdle to overcome the social challenge of marketing oneself, balanced with the need for anonymity and humility, and definitely a challenge to share something so personal and make it public, #writer's life. And I do have Miracle Austin asking a suggestion if you all would be willing towards the end. Will authors read a short excerpt of their works? How do you all feel about giving a little sneak peek inside your stories?
Yes.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so after the Q&A segment, I have a couple more questions. Then we can have short excerpt readings, and then the sign-off will follow that. But leading me to my next question, and again, for anyone on Facebook or YouTube, if you have a question, if you'd like to suggest anything to comment, please comment and make this engaging, interactive. It's wonderful to be making these connections and sharing these stories and having this all come to life. So my next question for you all is, what do you see for your future pertaining to writing or otherwise? This could be writing more books or growing professionally or working on other projects, either, authorship or otherwise. So starting with Ana Cavazos, what do you see for your future?
I continue to learn always learning technology, keeping up with as much as I can, keeping up with technology and what's going on, the different methods of communication, all that entails to be here right now. But in terms of writing, I'm working on more stories. I've got, I don't know, not very many people know this, but I took a course through snail mail. Snail mail. And it was not that long ago, 15 years. Okay. 15 years. So I took that course with the writers, the Institute of Children's Literature, just because I guess I was starting to think about writing. And so I worked with an author, and we wrote some manuscripts. So I'd send it off, she'd send it back. She, with additions, and I had to edit it, change it and update it, send it back to her, and so on and so forth. So I ended up with about 5 or 6 manuscripts, which I have been sitting on for that many years. I don't even want to say how many, because it's more. 15 is being kind. So I have all these manuscripts. I eventually plan to get those out. I want to put a compilation of short stories together, because it seems like that's where my niche is. That's where I can quickly put out a story and not necessarily having to go through the whole novel experience, which I am also doing on the side. But kudos to you, Katelynn, and to all the YA people that have written their novels. It is an amazing task.
Yes.
It really is. So I'm going to do that, put out my stories, put out my collection, working on all of that. I'm getting a renewed energy from all these panels and from all these people that we're meeting and talking to. And absolutely, I need to keep going. I'm going to write that. I'm going to keep learning. And that's what I have in store for me.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, what do you see for your future pertaining to writing or otherwise?
As far as the writing, it's so hard to say because I got into this by accident and I love it and I want to continue to do it. But there are so many things that are going on right now that I'm really right now, my journey of life at this very second is like literally I'm looking at several paths and I'm trying to determine which way I need to go. But as far as the writing is concerned, I mean, I love writing children's books because, again, my grandchildren inspire me, and I just think they're so funny. And for me, it just reminds me of how we should be living. You know, they give you like little simple reminders. They don't hold on to grudges. They laugh out loud. They sing. And so for me, that's my inspiration. And who's to say in a couple of years, that may change. And certainly we have that option. But as far as the writing is concerned, I still see myself going in the direction of children's books. And as an educator, that's what I enjoy working, that population with the students and sharing information and making those little connections. So as far as, right now, I think that's the direction I'm going in right now.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And Dr. E.T., what do you see for your future, writing or otherwise?
Well, my next book for sure is going to be on border violence and teacher perceptions of Mexican immigrant students' lived experiences with border violence. And so my dissertation was on that topic, but I'm working on writing a shorter piece that doesn't have like the methodology and all that, but more of the deep part. It's a very kind of like tragic, painful work, that piece, but it's work that has to be shared for many reasons. So that is for sure my my next book coming up.
Very nice. Thank you. And referring back to what you had said on the previous question, Daniel Garcia Ordaz said, and once you give birth and put the book out there in the world, you want people to love it. So it's tough dealing with criticism, but we book parents have thick skin. And I love that term so much, book parents. That makes me so happy. And also referring back to Rosa Linda Cruz is about, how kind of you can just kind of fall into writing sometimes and you don't expect it. The accidental artist, hashtag serendipity, hashtag the universe speaks. So I do have 2 more questions lined up, and then we can dig into excerpts before we conclude. But my second to last question is, do you have any interesting or close to your heart stories in your career as an author, either when you were writing or at the origin of the story or publication, or maybe an interaction you had at a school or an event or with a reader or family? What are some nice stories that you keep close to your heart, beginning with Mrs. Cavazos?
The only story that comes to mind, there's so many times when we meet students and they've given me a hug and said, I can do this, right? I said, yes, just call me, text me, whatever, and I'll help you. So far, I haven't had anybody get back to me, so I don't know if it really, connected, but at least the seed was planted and it's growing. But I think the birth of my story is a story that, or how it happened, that I think is kind of funny, but that's what pushed me over the edge to write it. I think I was telling my story of how we used to go to the fields. We were migrants. My parents were migrants. And as young children, I think to the age of school age, we went with them. And all I remember is cookies and the schools that we went to, the field trips and the big old trees and all kinds of fruit and all the things that happened. I remember that. And it was such warm memories. They're really good memories. But as we got older, we settled in San Benito and we stayed there. But then one summer, Mom thought, okay, these guys are asking for too many things, and we don't have all that money. So let me show them how money is earned. So she packed us up, had the people come pick us up. For an entire summer, we did working in the fields in the outskirts of the valley, the Rio Grande Valley. So we went out there, and I don't mention the tomato fights and all the other stuff that we did to make it fun, but it was tough. We were out there for a whole summer. We experienced getting on that truck, the early mornings, the dew, the smells, the carne guisada tacos, all these things, the shame when your high school friend is sitting next to you, going to the fields and having to endure all that. I mean, that's clearly sent a message to me to get to school, finish school, get to school, get through college, get a degree, because you don't want to do this all your life. Because I could not live with hat hair and all the sweating and all the hotness, it's just, so I think that is the story that and the fact that I try to tell my girls this story over, and I guess I told it too many times. And after like maybe the third time, they said, "Oh, there goes mom with her trekking in the snow kind of story to tell us again." So I never told it again, but I wrote it down. So I think that was the beginning of me actually being a writer, putting it down and getting ready to share it. I said, "Okay, well, you don't want to hear it, but maybe the grandgirls want to hear it, or the grandkids in the future want to hear it." And so that's how my story was born. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. Thank you so very much. And Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, do you have any interesting or close to your heart stories through your writing or authorship?
I mean, for me, as an author, my favorite part always is when I have someone come up to me and tell me that their child loves their book. I mean, the book is really for little ones. It's really for children that are 4 and under. It's very interactive. A lot of the words are repeated, but I did have a parent that actually just a couple of months ago, I ran into her, and I'm sort of familiar with her. And she had said that her little boy has, he has some respiratory issues and is in and out of the hospital. She goes, and we don't leave without that book. She goes, it just lights, it just makes his day, and it makes him feel good. And and it's Bubbles. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Bubbles. And so he's actually 5 now. And when I ran into her, she said, he loves that book. He's still reading it. And I thought, that is like so nice. And so for me, obviously, it's just nice that someone's getting, that they enjoy it. So that for me, that's just something that I really enjoy and I like.
Very nice. The connections are genuine. They're real. And again, you never know what type of, spark or the connection that will be made with any type of audience member, any type of family from all different backgrounds. It's a truly amazing thing. And Dr. E.T., any close to your heart stories or experiences from your own writing career or authorship?
I have some of my favorite memoirs for my book, but the other day I had a teacher message me. One of the memoirs is titled "Every Great Teacher Breaks the Rules." And so she said, that specific memoir brought her a lot of memories as a teacher when she would help her student every day by picking them up in the morning so they could make it to school. And so just how our stories, our writing does resonate with people, and then I had another one where I talked about tragedy and trauma and how trauma happens in the valley. And one of my friends shared with me, she said, I've never shared with anybody, but my tragedy happened when I was 3 years old. And now that I think about it, we never even talked about it as a family or at the school, but it's bringing me back those memories, how it's true. The title of that specific memoir is Trauma in La Frontera. We don't talk about it, right? So it's just when people read and they choose their favorite memoirs and they're like, you know what, this one really resonated with me. And so then, those become my favorites too.
Wonderful. Thank you. And our final question before we jump into excerpt reading is, for aspiring writers or authors, what words of advice would you offer? Either throughout this experience, you've learned a few things and they're on your list of, you should know this, or it may be things you wish you knew before you jumped into it, or, little gems of wisdom that you've gained along the way. For anyone aspiring to be a writer or aspiring to be an author, what words of advice would you offer, Ana Cavazos?
I think that they need to go ahead and start. Just start. Start your researching, start your practicing, start your writing. If it's photography, start that. Whatever it is that you want to do, start. It's never too early or too late to do anything that you want to do. You just, and again, the one that's stopping you is yourself. And I know that because I'm speaking from experience. Just go ahead and start, go ahead and do your research. Set those attainable goals as you go along, of course. And this is a message I love to give students because I wish someone had told me. Go ahead and dream big. Say, okay, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a firefighter, whatever it is you want to do. Set that goal for yourself, but don't say, oh, I don't have to do this because it doesn't have anything to do with being a doctor or being a teacher. Whatever you learn along the way is going to be knowledge for you. Knowledge is power. Put it in your pocket. You don't know if you're going to need that later. Look at this pandemic. Had I not cut my dog's hair for so many years, I would not have been able to do that. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I learned photography. I was thrown into a computer lab, which I hated because I wanted to be in the library, but I didn't have my degree as a library aide. So that set the foundation for the last job that I had, where we had I was at a technology school. We had a coffee shop in there. 60% of our books were online. Had I not prepared that way, had I not been prepared and picked up all that knowledge, I would not have been ready for that. So I am a firm believer that anything that comes your way, don't complain about it, learn it. Take it, put it in your pocket. You might need it later. So absolutely set attainable goals. Do that little by little until you reach your career goal. But for writing, get a journal and write. If all you want to do is an angry face that day, then do it. But another thing that I tell students is do character studies. Those are the hardest things to do. So you have a shy person as a friend, start writing what that shy person does. How do they react? What are the body? What do they do? Do they look down? Do they hold their hands together? If it's a grumpy person, oh my goodness, sketch that face, because you need to remember that for later. If you are writing about that character. Teachers, what do they do? Doctors, people you encounter. You write about what you do every day. I wish I could remember every minute of the day of what I did as a teenager, as a 15-year-old, as a 10-year-old. I don't remember every detail. So if I ever write a memoir, it's going to have to be an autobiographical one, because I'll have to make some of the things out. In any case, start your writing that way. Do character studies. There's so many graphic organizers out there. My comic strips and cartooning book has organizers for character studies and things like that. So if you don't use mine, use others on the internet. There's so much out there. Get your thoughts together, put them together in a notebook. You finish, you've done with that notebook, get another one. They're 15, 25 cents and add to that. And later, it's amazing. Katelynn, I don't know if you've done this, but if you go back and look at the 14-year-old, the 10-year-old, doesn't it amaze you? And you think, who's that? Was that me? Can I actually write that? So write all that and learn and grow. As you're growing, you're learning about yourself. Be mindful of what we need in life and arm yourself with that power. Writers today need to know technology, and you need to, and I'm glad I made it a point to learn. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't know how to do all of this. And Katelynn knows my journey and what I had to go through to get to this point. But I'm here and I had to learn. It was a big learning curve on some areas. So learn it all. Go ahead and start your journey. Just do it. Get started.
Very nice. And there were a couple of comments coming in during your answer. I know from Miracle Austin, she said, so true. Never too early or late. Dream big. 100%. Absolutely. That's probably, for school presentations and things, that's the number one big hit home point that I try to make. I have the students scream, don't stop dreaming. And it's, I tell them, if there's one thing, I want you to remember from this, when you go home, and your parents ask, what did you do today? It's, the author made me scream in the library. And we said, don't stop dreaming. And just, getting that started, getting that inspiring aspect is absolutely wonderful. And Daniel Garcia Ordaz had said, stories about trauma are difficult to bring up, yet those are the discussions we need to have. Instead, we stigmatize the storyteller or victim and make the topic taboo, but acknowledgement leads to healing. 100%, absolutely. And he says, start your journey. Yes. So I love this. There's so many gems stemming from these answers and stemming from these conversations. It's absolutely wonderful. And so for Ms. Rosa Linda Cruz, for aspiring writers or authors, what words of advice would you lend to them?
I think in general, because even as a counselor, when I talk to my students, you know, they have, well, what if, and what if it doesn't happen? And I'm like, how are you going to know if you don't even try? And so for me, it's just taking the steps and moving forward. And if you fall down, again, you dust yourself up and you get up and you move forward again. And if you make an error in judgment or you make a mistake and you take 5 steps back, then you move 10 steps forward. You have to just move forward and be patient with yourself, develop your skill, develop your talent, and don't be afraid to try things out. I'm naturally an introvert, believe it or not. And it is very difficult for me to come out and do presentations. But because I believe in the things that I do, I feel that that is something that we need to be sharing. And so I tell the students, if you see an opportunity, just do it. If there's somebody opens up a little bit of a window, you go in. I said, don't be afraid, because what's the worst that can happen? And a lot of the times they discover that actually builds their self-confidence. It's an opportunity to go somewhere else. It's an opportunity to develop more skill, more talent, to network, to meet other people. And so what happens is their world starts off like this and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because now they are trying and attempting and going with what is being presented to them. So, you know, and I think all of us, even as adults, we encounter those moments where you get invited and I'm driving in the car and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? Why am I going? I'm not like them. I'm not even a real, you know? And so, but then I get there and people are kind and respectful and they share their, you know, techniques and all of their words of wisdom. And so it's a journey of growth, you know, mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually. And so I always say, you know what, don't be afraid. Go with it and learn and join clubs. And it doesn't matter if your friends go. This is your life. Live it. And so I would just say, move forward.
I love that so very much. Just it's a journey of growth. We're constantly learning, constantly growing in our own skills, in our, you know, little circles. It expands and expands the networking, the skills that you gain, the insight, the experience, those stories that we keep close to our heart. We're constantly growing, constantly. I love that so very much. That's a wonderful, wonderful sentiment. And Dr. E.T., any words for aspiring authors or writers, either from your own experience or little nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share?
For my experience is just start writing. You know, for me, I know that there's certain books that I want to write, and so I'll create a title for it, and then I'll just start writing 1 sentence, 2 sentences, and maybe I'll come back to it in 2 months or in 2 weeks or in 2 days. But the fact that I've given it a name and that it exists, it kind of always reminds me, you know what, today I'm feeling really inspired. I'm just going to go write. But you have to have it. You have to see it. You can't just say, well, you know what, I'm going to do it tomorrow, or I have this idea. Sit down in front of the computer, give it a title, you know, which you can change at any time, right? And just start writing your first paragraph. That's, to me, has always been the process. And if you're feeling really inspired, write at that moment, because if not, time passes by and you're like, I don't feel like it anymore. Because your heart speaks to you and says you need to write right now. And so you have to be like, okay, I better go write it. So to me, just make sure that you give it a title, whatever it is. You start with the first page, you know, with the first paragraph, and then take it from there.
Very nice. Thank you so very much. And before we have our concluding remarks, we can begin with excerpt readings. You can maybe briefly discuss what the book is about once more for anyone who hopped on late before you read the excerpt, or you can dive right in, and we can begin with Ana Cavazos.
So in my through Fields to an Education, I try to propel the reader into a day in the life of a migrant worker. So You're going to hear a little bit of the sights and smells of those early mornings, which are forever etched in my mind and many migrant children's minds. I want to start by showing you that I kind of paid homage to my parents. Let's see if I can do this. You see my house there? That's the house that built me. That's the house where I grew up in. So home is where our story begins, and I'm going to read a little bit about Your Fields to Education, a memoir. And it is a short story, and I like to say that it is short enough so that it can be a springboard for conversations and for lessons taught in the classroom. Alex Ray is my illustrator, and that was what my house looked like during one of the hurricanes where we had to tape up our windows. So I'm going to read a little bit, first paragraph, on what that is like. So my sleepy eyes jerked open, and my stomach burned at the sound of the two staccato honks from the old Ford truck as it slid to the stop by the curb. The door clicked, prepared us for the sudden slam of the screen door against the wood as we walked outside. The smell of the warm carne guisada tacos nauseated me, but comforted me at the same time. I could hear the soft buzz of the people talking as we climbed into the truck's dark bed. The men scooted over on the wooden benches to make room for my younger sister, my mother, and me. My older brothers squeezed in wherever they could find room. My sister trembled as the cool air hit her body. So that's a tiny excerpt of Your Fields to Education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Rosa Linda Cruz, if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about My Favorite Bubbles and read a short excerpt.
So this is My Favorite Bubbles, and the illustrator is Alex Ray, and again, wonderful talent. And it is a children's book, and it's for 4 and under, and it's very interactive. My oldest grandson likes to tell his little brother that this book is not about him, it's about him. And so, but I do read it to my 3.5-year-old grandson, the second one, because the older one is now 11 years old. And that's how fast time, flies by, right? So when I read it to him, it is very interactive. So I'll just read 3 pages, which sounds like a lot, but it's not. So when I read it to him, we point out the illustrations, and I will say, 1 bubble, 2 bubbles, 3 bubbles, more. And then he turns the page, and then I say, single bubbles, double bubbles, triple bubbles galore. And then we talk about many bubbles of many kinds. Small, teeny, tiny bubbles. Big, gigantic, enormous bubbles. And that is my excerpt.
Thank you very much. I just love the engaging, the interaction, the voices, and the getting, your grandson, and in general, the readers. I know I've read your story at Derry Elementary for Hispanic Heritage Month. I went and I read, and it was to pre-K, and they were all, wow, and the illustrations are beautiful. The way that you use different vocabulary words is just really, really amazing. Thank you so very much. And Dr. E.T., an excerpt that you'd like to read and tell us a little bit more about your book?
So here's a copy of my book, Living and Teaching on the Texas-Mexico border, the life lessons it has taught me. So basically it's memoirs of experiences. And one of my favorites for me is the memoir titled Language Broker at 8 years old. And so it's about 2 pages, but I'm going to read just a paragraph. I distinctly remember the many times I translated for my parents while I was a little kid. I would translate for them at school, at the bank, at the electric company, the grocery store, you name it, I did it. My least favorite was translating English movies because while I was busy translating an episode, I would always miss the good parts. Translating is part of an immigrant child's life. It is what we did and what we do. So this one is about, lived experience and how our immigrant children walk into a classrooms with a range of lived experience that's so powerful, like translating. That's a big deal. People get paid thousands of dollars to be translators, and here are little kids translating for their parents even today. So that's one of my favorites.
Thank you very much. I love it. It's just, sentiment to the Rio Grande Valley. Again, like you said, there are children who do these on the daily, and then they read about it and they identify and say, like, that's me. That's what I'm doing. And it's absolutely wonderful. And again, I just love the notion, and it was a recurring theme that you brought up, just like, disrupt the system in a good way. Like, start these conversations.
They're language brokers. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Very nice. I love that sentiment so very much. So, to everyone on Facebook and YouTube who tuned in and watched and left a comment, thank you so very much for watching. And to all of our beautiful, amazing panelists here, thank you so very much. This was amazing. The conversations, the gems, the anecdotes, the answers. There was just so much to dig into and so many gems of just wisdom and things to share. And you all are so very wonderful, and just, a beautiful, beautiful representation of the talent that is here in the Rio Grande Valley, especially among just people who are going to be sharing their stories from the heart, their experiences. It's absolutely wonderful and beautiful. And we have a couple of questions or comments coming in. I know Manuel Ruiz, author who was with us yesterday, says, nice, enjoyed these readings. Thank you, Manuel. Daniel Garcia Ordaz is putting hearts. Miracle Austin said, so enjoyed, learned so much. And Raul Martinez Jr. says, thank you, everyone. And yes, thank you, panelists, absolutely, for being here. Thank you so very much. And before we sign off, we can have some concluding words and also get those plugs. Tell me where we can find you on websites and social media, where your book is available, beginning with Miss Ana Cavazos.
First of all, thank you, Katelynn, for this platform you've given us, not just for us to speak, but for us to learn about other people. I don't know who's more excited, you for having us or us for meeting each other, connecting again with Rosa Linda, getting to meet Dr. E.T. and her fabulous glasses. I love them. Thank you for being on this journey. To everybody that commented, everybody that's out there, thank you. Thank you for being on this journey with us. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you. My book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I have a website, and I think Katelynn's going to put a banner up. We have a website. Follow me on my website, on Facebook. We have Instagram. I am under Ana A. Cavazos. So anything that I can do for you, I would be happy to. My goal is to service children of the Rio Grande Valley and let them know that they can, too, be in this position where they can move from wherever they're at. And all they have to do, the only way is up. So let me know if there's anything I can do. Thank you again. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so very much. And Miss Rosa Linda Cruz, any final words to sign off? And where can we find you after this? And where is your book available?
The book is available on Amazon.com. And then, of course, we have a lot of little local stores, bookshops in the Rio Grande Valley that also are housing it. But definitely, with everything going on, Amazon.com is where you can definitely find it. And I do have a website, www.rosalinda, yes, there we go, cruz.org, because I do a lot of different things. And so I kind of incorporate everything together. And you can follow me on Facebook. And I believe she's going to put it up there also with Rosa Linda Cruz.
Thank you so very much. And for Dr. E.T., where is your book available, and where can we find you after this?
Hi, you can find my books on Amazon. And of course, you can also go to my website, where I also have different platforms that I work under. And so you can find me at dretandcompany.org. You can find my different books or how to get a hold of me. My social media on Twitter is Dr. E.T. on the Border. I also have an Instagram and a Facebook, and you can find all that on the website. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so very much. These conversations were wonderful. The audience engagement was amazing. And just again, thank you all so very much, not only for coming on here today, being amazing panelists, sharing your stories, but also just your place in education and everything that you've done for students, impacting our communities, representing our communities, making sure that these stories from your own familial experiences or Rio Grande Valley experiences are preserved and shared, and for being inspirations to other people, like myself, other students parents, other families, other children. Just thank you all for being yourselves. And it was such an honor and it was such a pleasure. And I know this is not the last we will see of each other. I hope to see you all very soon, virtually or otherwise. So thank you so very much.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Katelynn.